next guest speaker is from New Jersey. She is a brain coach who helps growing entrepreneurs rewire their brain to be more efficient and effective. She's been helping thousands improve their cognitive function with over 250,000 likes on her videos on TikTok and over 500,000 views on YouTube. She's solving core issues of the brain and mind instead of band-aid solutions. She's the creator of LifePix University. She is one of Get to Know You's familiar faces, revisiting with incredibly enriching conversations. Welcoming back ST Rappaport to Get to Know You. Welcome, ST. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you so much, Tiffany. I love having these conversations with you. And if I tell you, I'm actually excited and looking forward to it, not just another thing I have to check on my to-do list. It's really true.
I'm so happy to hear that. We love having you. And you know what? I've listened to our conversations, our podcasts that we've done together many times. I'm like, oh my God, they're so good. I'm like, I learned something every time I re-listen.
I agree, right? Yeah, well, I learned from you just as much. And I think that's part of what's the beauty of your podcast that most people don't have. Usually just an interview and you're asking the expert the same thing that they spoke about 500 times and they just repeat on robot. And you ask questions that actually make people have to think and come up with new or deeper answers. I don't know if new, not especially as a new, but they have to articulate it in new ways and really get clear on what they're actually talking about. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That really means a lot. And that's the intention here. We want to provoke introspection within the conversation, make people think, and it's not a rehearsed response that you've been repeating 5 million times. So I'm glad that's come across. So you've had an incredible journey. We've met 2 years ago. Now with your LifePix University and as a brain coach, and you're helping so many people, and just tell us a bit about how have you seen people in your community that you've created just grow and strengthen their cognitive function?
Yeah, it's been 2 years. I feel like it's been more than that. I don't even know. It's been so long. But I really work on helping people solve their core issue, as you mentioned in the intro, right? So I'm not giving anyone any specific skills, right? This is how you should do to make your copy better, or these are the 5 things you need to do to build your business, or anything like that. I'm going behind everything, behind all the courses you have taken, behind everything you've learned in school, and really getting to understand how your brain thinks, how your brain functions, and what are the skills that you need in order to do everything else that you've learned, in order to do everything that you do in your life in the most efficient and effective way.
That's fantastic. So you're getting to the root of the problem. What's going on? Let's go down to the root, the cellular, let's get down to the the main issue, the main issue that where everything else stems from, as to why maybe people aren't benefiting from courses or learning new things or absorbing information and so on.
Exactly. Yeah, I like to call the center of the web, right? So coming out of the web are all the things that you learn and all the things that you do on your everyday, but at the center, that is what we're working on when we solve the core issue.
That's fantastic. I love that. I love that. Now, listeners, our question that we're going to dive into from my point and from ST's point is this question that we both just love. Now, the question is, how do we identify people with a higher self-awareness? Now, when I first came to you with this question, ST, what did you first think?
So I right away thought of myself. I know this is very selfish of me to say, and maybe isn't the right thing to say when you're having such a selfless question, but maybe it has to really do with the question of what you're saying about being that self-aware of who you are and what triggers you and who you really are as a person. And it really got me thinking, because I like to call myself the self-awareness queen, just because I believe that every single thing, in order to change, in order to make any sort of improvement, in order to do anything in your life, that's not just on robot, you have to have that self-awareness. Without that, nothing's going to change, right? Think of a habit. You don't change a habit without being aware that you need to change a habit. Anything that you're going on throughout the day, you have to be aware of that. So I was like, that's a really interesting perspective. Not only do you want to be self-aware about yourself, but it's being self-aware about, or recognizing the self-awareness in the other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And a great point that you pointed out there, because self-awareness isn't something that you're born with. It's something, habits that you learn to cultivate. So you start off learning habits from your parents, the way they bring you up, and habits that they instill in you, and then you have to carry on and do these things yourself. You can't just be like, okay, my parents brought me up to this thing, I don't need to learn, or some things that, when you're bringing up a child, you need to bring up yourself. Like, that's what people forget. It's like you have to continue bringing up yourself through the rest of your life.
Yeah, so I have a question for you, but before that, there's two things that they say like that makes you like so-called like grow up the fastest or like develop yourself the fastest. One is raising a kid, raising family, and two is business. Like same thing, you really have to work on yourself in order to go and grow any of those things. But you mentioned that self-awareness isn't something that you're born with, something that you develop. Do you mean that like it's like not at all something, right? Like we learn how to walk. So even if we're not walking when the minute that we're born, we like eventually it's something that's natural to humans to learn how to walk. Do you think self-awareness is like that also?
Like to that basic level, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, is it like something that like if we aren't taught it or if we aren't I don't know anyone who teaches self-awareness, but if we aren't like super conscious to develop self-awareness, does it happen by itself? Because like I'm just let's say thinking of babies, like they get a certain point, like 18 months, 24 months, where they start like yes, identifying who they are as a person, like this is me in the mirror, right? And this is like what I like, and this is the food that I like. So that's a very basic level of self-awareness. But is that taught?
I think, like, my opinion of like how I look at all this, and just looking at myself and the people that I look up to who are quite highly self-aware. I think, you know, maybe we're aware of like our surroundings, and that's what it starts with. So it needs to be, your eyes seeing, awareness. A lot of awareness is through your eyes. Obviously, and how you feel as well, but a lot of it's through your eyes because observing others. Like, it's not a matter of just being aware of, wait, what am I feeling towards this? But what am I observing? Is someone, reacting, getting angry, and getting their, am I able to observe someone's, blood boiling? Am I able to, before they start screaming and yelling, can I see that someone's getting wound up? Like, are you able to observe that to be able to like not push their buttons anymore? Like, are you, like certain things?
So you're taking in the information through your eyes, but you're translating it in your brain, right? Because two people could be like seeing a person about to get angry, but they're each going to react different, even though they're seeing the same exact thing.
Exactly. So someone might just be like, not, I don't know if it's not care or not notice, or be like, I can't do anything. I'm just going to keep behaving how I'm behaving, even though I'm seeing the person in front of me get angry. Or the other person, who I think is more self awareness, will, you know, almost try and shift the emotion, or bring it back down, or maybe they're using a tone or using a word that's, they're noticing someone getting angry, so don't keep repeating that word, or just be, hey, notice it, say, hey, look, I don't mean to like push your buttons here, or you make a statement of tell the other person, I'm noticing that what I'm saying is affecting you and it's making you angry, like, and you make a comment about it. See, many people don't even do that. Like, they're not.
Yeah, so that's what like I was thinking as you're talking, right? So let's say two people are watching a person get angry, and let's say the other one person notices and is like gonna do something about it. The second person notices but isn't sure what to do. Does that mean they're not self-aware in taking action? They're not like where does like we define the self-aware awareness part? Like where they know what's happening? Like what do you think?
I think, like, know what's happening, even if you don't know what to do. I think just trying to, as long as you're noticing it, but taking action as well. Like, take action as in, like, maybe go, hey, I think we should take a step back from this conversation right now. I don't want to, it's getting a bit heated. I need to take a step back. Or we both should take a step back. Like, you need to take a step as well. You can't, it's not a matter of, I think, just noticing things. It's, noticing things and your behavior, being in control of your own emotion as well. Like, that person getting angry or whatever they're saying, is that, are you, or they might throw a comment. Do you have control of your emotions and your reactions? Like, can you control if this person now gets that angry that they becomes personal and they throw out like a rude comment or say something horrible? Are you able to like contain yourself and like manage your own emotions and reactions?
So the self-awareness part, I'm just like clarifying. Yeah. The self-awareness part isn't the fact that you noticed a person getting angry. It's you're being aware of yourself, of knowing what to do in that situation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So then let's say bringing it to just yourself, not being self-aware of other people, being aware of yourself, you're like, okay, I have this habit, or I like get triggered every time I see this thing. So being aware when that happens. But I'll tell you why I don't love that. I'm getting it and understanding. I'm just like thinking of some examples, right? So let's say someone is becoming more self-aware and they notice that they have certain triggers. Okay, let's say they notice that they eat every time they're like stressed or whatever, right? So there's one level of identifying, of knowing that you eat when you're stressed. It's another level of identifying like, hey, I'm stressed and I noticed I'm eating a cupcake. It's another level to say, hey, I'm stressed. I noticed I'm about to grab a cupcake, but I'm forcing myself not to do it. So at what point is it considered self-aware?
well, there's a few things I've read, a few things that are considered that they're talking about. So there's a psychologist wrote about 5 different traits where people are considered self-aware. And there's also another study that I read. Firstly, I'll mention this study. This study I read by Tasha Eurich. They did a test. They had a criteria. Probably not these 5 things. I'm going to guess probably 20, 30 different questions, scenarios, and so on to put people in. Now, the study was done on 5,000 people. 5,000 people all said, yes, I'm self-aware. I have self-awareness. Now, only 10% of those people were actually self-aware based on the criteria. So it's a small amount of people. It's not, it's.
I'm like, oh my gosh, does that mean I'm not really self-aware?
Well, I know. Like, now I want
Okay,
to
so
be
what was the
testing.
criteria?
Yeah, what's the criteria exactly? Like, are we, me and you having this conversation? Are we both self-aware? Like, I'd love to like see this criteria. I'd love someone to test me and find out.
Oh, there doesn't say in the study what it
No,
is.
no, they haven't said exactly what the criteria is, which I'd love to know. And the other thing too is, people think self-awareness is just like reflecting. And what was great in this study that they also pointed out is people are reflecting or introspective the wrong way. They're actually not introspective in the correct way. So people are reflective and they, people spiral, they focus on the negative thing, like why did I do that? Or why didn't I do that? Or why is this not happening for me? Or why? And then they just get into this negative loop and they just keep getting spiraling downwards. Now, what was said in this psychologist mentioned is that we should be asking what questions, which may empowered us more, made us stronger, helped us find solutions for whatever it is that we were like, reflecting on. And that was more of a true introspection. But most people are introspective incorrectly, which was, that to me, alone is just, I don't know. I just didn't think,
It's
I thought it's like a process. It's like we're all walking, like I didn't think, I don't know. In my head, it wasn't like something you could do incorrectly, but it's has been identified as a thing that most people incorrectly are introspective.
because like personally, I'm not like a psychologist or a doctor of any sort of this field to be able to say that, but like personally, I would think that people that like just go into why this happening and why whatever, they're more like either complaining or just like overthinking versus introspecting and really trying to understand what's going on here, how do I deal with it, how do I move forward, etc.
Exactly. And that makes me think the criteria that where they were asked, like, oh, you're introspective, what the definition of it was or what they think it is not actually what they're doing. So exactly what you just said. I think it's overthinking and complaining and they're thinking I'm being reflective. Oh, I'm
Right,
reflecting
right.
on my date. No, you're not. You're just wallowing. And the other thing too, so there was a conversation with Tim Ferriss and Brené Brown, and they both made this statement. They said they claimed that most of the hate and unhappiness in the world is because of a lack of self-awareness. Now, it's a very strong statement to make. I agree with them. I'm not going to say that I don't, because I think a lot of it stems from a lot of it stems from that. And then the psychologist went on to these 5 different habits and practices that highly self-aware people have. I'll tell you what they are. So the first one
they
is,
did give us.
yes, this is what they did give us in this study. So the 5 habits of highly self-aware people were, the first one is they listen more than they talk.
Okay, not me.
No, you do, like active listening. And like we've spoken about this before. Like, how many people, like, I think listening is getting worse and worse and worse. People are not listening to each other. Even like, even if you just, I don't know, notice new people or old friends or whatever, you sit with someone and you say something to them, then they say something like back to you about what they're hearing, and you're like, whoa, you're really not even with me right now. It's so far away that they're not even hearing you, but they think they are.
Yeah, because they feel, this is my assumption, is people like feel that they're in your presence, so officially they're listening to you,
Exactly.
but the words aren't entering their brain.
The words aren't entering the brain. They're listening to not to listen, just to say something. They maybe heard one word or hear 2 words, but they're not actually listening. You know what was really interesting? You know Simon Sinek?
Yep.
Okay, yes. So you follow him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was in an interview recently, and he's been claimed as a really good listener, okay? Really, really good. He's like scores very high on listening tests. Like, he's a high-end listener, okay? Now, his ex-partner was telling him, you're not a good listener. And he went and saw a therapist, and and they found that even with his family and so on and close friends, he actually wasn't a good listener with the people that he was closest to. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. It was actually very interesting, like, that you're bringing this up now, because just last week, I think it was, I was with my friend in England and spent 3 days with her. And then it was like the last night, we're like laying in bed and we're like talking. And she's like, no, backtrack. Before we were laying in bed and talking, we're having this conversation. We're sitting in a bar, and all of a sudden, she's in the middle of telling me the story, and I interrupted her. Okay, and then she interrupted me. She's like, "You're a rubbish listener." Now, for Americans, that means you're like a really bad listener. And I just laughed. I was like, "Yeah, whatever." So then, when we were lying in bed, then she was telling me, she's like, "You know what? Most people will be insulted when I tell them that they're a rubbish listener." And I was like, maybe I would be insulted, but the part of me that was in that conversation, first of all, doesn't get insulted. Second of all, really is a rubbish listener. So I know that the part that I showed up in that conversation right there at that bar came up in a really bad way. Usually when we like go out to eat or talking on the phone or going for a walk, I have a different part of me, more a friend part of me that's a much better listener. So you're used to me talking to you in that way. For some reason in that conversation, because of the events that were happening at that time, a different part of me came out, more like argumentative and things, and someone like stubborn. And I think that, so going back to Simon, it's the same type of thing. We have different parts to us, not like that we're like split personality, but rather different parts of us show up in different times. And even skills that we have, like listening or being self-aware, are better or worse with different parts of us.
Absolutely. Like, I totally like, I like that point that you're pointing out there. Even with me, like, I listen a lot. I would say I'm a good listener. And friends have told me, and yeah, I would say I'm a good listener. But there are moments, I think, like, sometimes I think if when I'm always listening or listening a lot to people, I will have a little burst, I think, where I just need to talk. Like, I want to talk with, and it might come with the person who wants to talk at that moment. But because I've been doing a lot of listening, I haven't really had that moment where I can talk. So like, I do notice, like, when it comes out, but it's rare. It's like I said, because I do a lot of listening. The person who receives the Tiffany that wants to talk, it's not like so common all the time.
Yeah, but I think that's going back to self-aware. That's part of being self-aware, is knowing to have a conversation, that even if you're saying a story and even if you're telling about your day and things that are happening, to give those pauses, so that way, in case the person does want to talk, they have
Absolutely.
like opportunity.
Exactly. But when that doesn't happen, or when you're not with
Yeah.
people who are self-aware, you don't get an opportunity to talk.
That's right. And I think that there are times that like it's right to interrupt, okay? Like just rambling on forever. Like even in a podcast, if like one person is just rambling on forever, it gets boring,
So
right?
boring.
So
Absolutely, totally agree. The next point, so it was five. So the point number two was they're curious about their own minds. Now we both do that one, of course,
yeah.
obviously with our podcast. Super curious about our minds. But a lot of people aren't. A lot of people aren't curious about, why do I have this, you know, why do I always have this train of thought? Or why do I always have this pattern that I always do? Or why, when I'm in this situation, I react this way? Like we're always questioning, trying to better ourselves. But a lot of people aren't questioning to better themselves. They're more into like self-sabotage.
Yeah, personally, I think this is like my theory, that if you watch young kids, they're always really curious. They're always trying new things and they're always learning new things. Now they get in a lot of trouble because of that. And many times it squashes their creativity and more importantly, their curiosity
Mm-hmm.
very, very, very quickly. So all of a sudden, they're not allowed to ask questions. They're not allowed to touch anything. Everything is a no. They're not interested. So from a very young age, they learn not to ask questions and not to do. And then later on, if they don't develop it themselves again, like consciously, it's just gonna stay like that forever.
That's a great point that you pointed out there. Yeah, kids are super like, kids are super curious. They just don't stop asking questions. But I did notice I was actually walking down the street the other day. I was on what day was it? It was on Saturday, and this kid was next to me. So I'm in Madrid, Spain, but this kid, they were speaking English. They were from England somewhere, and this kid was like, "Dad, but what about this? Like, why did this happen? Why did you throw this away?" It was some like his father threw away this toy. He's like, it melted. It's like, but couldn't we repair it? It's like, that's just how it was. And he kept on asking questions because he wanted to understand why, or like, what's this thing happening? Or like, he wanted to know more. And the father didn't have an answer, which is fair enough. He doesn't know. Like, he doesn't know. But he was quick to shut him down. It's like, no, no, just don't stop asking questions. Like, and like, move to something else instead of letting his brain go and like, maybe questioning it together or something like that. And I think a lot of parents do that.
Yeah, 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 exactly. I'm like you said, like it just happens so much. And to be like totally honest, it could get very draining, especially like little kids, like everything's a question and then they have another question and their curiosity never settled. So I don't think that like you always, always, always 24/7 have to be on, but it could be like more like maybe we'll figure it out together, or what do you think? Or like you said, like questioning it together in a way is like less draining like that. And just maybe them having like teaching them the skills to help them find out the answers by themselves so they don't always come to you, although they should still come to you. Like I'm not saying that they shouldn't, but I understand why parents do that, but I still don't agree with it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I totally get it. Yeah. Um, and yeah, like people aren't like, I think people like to, there's a lot, not just about listening, but they don't like being still with themselves. They don't even want to think about why they're doing things like that. People would rather, a lot of people I think are on the like self-medicating kind of path. Like people drink a lot to just forget about things instead of questioning things. People take drugs, people do a lot of stuff like that. Like, they're in like this destructive phase where they think if I just block it out or whatever, I don't need to focus on it. I don't need to grow. I don't need to better myself.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Because it's the easier way out.
Easier way, exactly. It's the easier way out. The third point that was mentioned was they look for emotional blind spots.
That is interesting. And I'm curious how they defined it in the article.
How, like, as an what is an
Like
emotional
how
blind spot?
I know what emotional blind spots are, but like I'm curious what their specific definition of it was.
So they're saying that like emotional blind spots are like parts of our emotional lives that because they're especially painful, we tend to ignore. So you know how I was having this conversation with a few people, and some people tend to um if they had a painful experience when they were children, their memory, it's like they lost their memory is gone. They don't remember a lot of things. They're like, I don't know, I don't have any memory of it. Now I think, the brain does it to protect itself. Like the
Right.
brain either, but it goes in two ways. Like I can remember really painful things. So, and they usually say if something has attached a lot of pain to it, usually you have a stronger memory of it as well. So you either go one extreme end or you go to the other extreme end where you remember it so vividly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. it will depends, first of all, on your brain's general coping mechanism and on that specific situation, what your brain thinks is best, right? Like the brain by the end of the day is hardwired for survival. So it's just going to block out. But we were saying that they are in what was the third one? They're in tune to their
They
emotional
they
blockages. How did they word
they
it?
look
They
for
look for
emotional blind
emotional,
spots.
yeah,
Yeah,
emotional blind spots.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that specific action takes a lot of like vulnerability and willing to be able to like do hard work, because very nice, you know, about this blind spot, but like now what, right? Like I remember, like I still do actually. I get a lot of like a lot of hate actually on social media for the fact that like I tell people about the concept that they have weak cognitive functions. And I'm like, dude, you have weak cognitive functions whether I tell you or not. But if I tell you, then you can go and do something about it. And I'm not telling you to tell you that you're a bad person. We all have weak cognitive functions, but we all can improve them, right? So people, it's like so much easier to just be naive, pretend we don't know, not look for our things. But then once we do know them, we now actually have to do the hard work to go and improve them.
And that's a great point that you just pointed out there. People are getting insulted about it, and this is the truth of it all. Is I just saw another video recently actually of Jay Shetty was talking about how true change, like he said, it was like he was saying that change is like has a high possibility, like a high that you can change, but the probability of it is low. For true change to occur, like people to make these really big changes in their patterns and their behaviors and things, they actually usually have to go through a lot of turmoil and stress and a painful, really horrible experience, a really painful one, for them to actually make a change of their patterns and their behaviors and their ways of thinking and their reaction in their lives.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's true. Becoming a better person isn't especially an easy process, but it's so much more worth it. And being aware of these emotional blind spots take a lot of courage and strength, and but it's much more worth it afterwards.
Absolutely, totally. It's way more worth it. But, it's really saddening that people, for people to make significant real changes in these things where they're maybe hurting people and doing things and things like that, and they have these really horrible patterns, like that it's something that, they have to go through despair and suffering for them to actually make a change in themselves. And the thing too that he pointed out is that they don't actually make a change for people. They're not trying to change for someone, a partner, family, or whatever. They make a change. It happens because they're like, shit, I need to be better.
Yeah. Yeah, because of the amount of work that it takes and the amount of pain that a person has to go through to make a real change, can't think of like someone enough for it to be able to, like someone that you care about enough that you're actually gonna do it. Like even if it's your spouse and you absolutely love them and like crazy over them, by the end of the day, you're not so much caring about them, you're caring about the fact how you affect the relationship with them. It's like the you of it in them, right? Um, so yeah, it has like you have to see the benefit and the worth of it. And it's actually an interesting like thing to think about why we have to go through so much pain and so much work in order to have that change.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and that's a great thing. Yeah, like you just said, like people look at their contribution to a relationship. They start realizing, shit, what do I offer? Do I just bring these horrible patterns? Do I bring these horrible habits into the relationship? Is that my value in this relationship? And they realize, shit, I don't want that value. I don't want to, I want to add something good, which is
Yeah.
good, which is good. I think it's a good slap in the face that they need, honestly. A good wake up call.
Self-awareness. Yeah.
Self-awareness, slap in the face. You need. All right. And our fourth point is they ask for feedback and take it well.
I know. It's like one thing like saying like, okay, I want feedback on how to do my job better. And then it's like, no. And you're getting like all defensive and like trying to prove and reason with every single like piece of feedback that you get back. Yeah. I think I've been thinking about it recently, like why it's so hard for people to take feedback. Like I think it's more than like just an ego thing, but sometimes like you're really working so hard on something and like maybe you like put in tons of effort and then it's like you could be doing it better. You know, like it's hard. It's hard, I think.
Yeah. Well, it is part like I think a big thing is ego. I think ego, like, why people do have bad patterns and horrible patterns and do horrible things or say horrible things and so on. Like, I think, what I don't like? I don't like when people blame it on mental health. We're like, oh, depression, anxiety, whatever mental health issue that they have, and they use that as, that's why I'm horrible. No, any psychologists, doctors, medical people will not tell you that your mental health issues, you can't blame your mental health issues on to why you said or did that horrible thing. Your horrible things and behaviors and things that you do and say is all your ego.
It's a very strong statement to make. I don't know if it's all ego. Personally, someone who works with cognitive functions and brains, I think sometimes it's from that. A lot of times it's from that, personally. A lot of times, people do things without even realizing, simply because of a cognitive function. I'll give you an example. Where I used to live, there was a lot of times problems with parking. And people would literally just block cars with their parking. Now, it's not because they're bad, but simply because they have a weak cognitive function, actually of orientation in space, of understanding space around them, but not so much about recognizing that they're blocking someone else, but understanding the space in relation of what they're doing to someone else. And that cognitive function just weaken them. So a big part of it is ego, but I think that there's other parts to it also. Although I'm the last person to go and tell you that everything is because of mental health, depression, whatever. I like to look at it not so much of okay, it's the depression that's making you act this way, but there's a reason why you're depressed. You're not born depressed, right? There's something that's coming, that happened, events, multiple of events, things that created you to be depressed. So depression is not what made you act that way, but there was maybe something else that caused something else to make you behave the way you did. Again, it's not an excuse, but rather understanding why you did it. Someone who wants to be self-aware and wants to improve can go back to trace it, so that way they know what to fix.
Sure. So I think, I agree with that, but I think, what you're talking about is more self-awareness, your orientation. These are small things, but I'm talking about a blatant, horrible thing, someone walks up to you and slaps you in the face. That's not the same as as in
no, I'm confused now. What does it have to I'm challenging you. Yeah.
I know, I like it.
What does that have to do with ego?
Come on. No, well, I don't know. Maybe they're some people they're road rage. People get out in the car and they want to get out and fight, and they want to, because he blocked him on, he walked off. Isn't that ego? Instead of
I don't know, in a way, maybe it's culture. I remember once I was in Israel. Yeah. I was on a bus, public buses there, and they were coming in, and basically it was a big fight. The bus driver got off and he got into a massive fight with a guy in front of him, and it was we were just sitting there. I was I just want to go, and he's just getting into fight with him, and in the end they just hugged, and they went on their buses and they went back to each other, and that was the end. So was the fight an ego part of he is upset that he did this stupid thing to him? Maybe, but in a way, maybe I felt it was automatic response. He's used to this. He saw this thing his whole life. They're just used to it. So he just has to act that way because he saw that his whole life. I don't know. I'm not sure. For sure, ego is part of it. I don't know if ego is all of it.
But ego, it's ego allows it to keep going. So it's obviously a habit that first happens, right? So it's initial reaction. Maybe it happened. For example, the first time anything happens, I don't think I won't say your ego thing, but your ego, the way I'm defining it is when you allow something, you're letting it keep happening. You're letting yourself, for example, you've been through horrible things. I've been through horrible things. I've done I've experienced a lot. Why do some people who experience a lot of horrible things, bad things that happen to them, but yet they don't treat people badly? They're not letting that, where they, do you understand what I mean? Where other people, I had a bad background, yeah. I had shit, so that's why I treat people badly. And it's where, do you get what I'm trying to say?
I get what you're saying, I hear what you're saying and get it. Not everyone who has bad things happen to them specifically do bad things. Thank goodness, because or else what this world will look like.
Yeah, the world will look horrible. Thank goodness for that. Yeah.
But on the other side, I don't think that everyone who does bad things it's all because they had everyone do bad things to them, right? Like there's always a reason for everything, and part of it is ego. But like I like to say, like I'll give you another example, yeah. When I was in Ethiopia, then there was like the orphanage says, and they have like two buildings, and there's one building where they're like much younger kids, and there's a 7-year-old. She was like one of the oldest people there in that group. She would hide behind corners and then stick out her foot, and then when someone comes, they would trip, like to trip them over.
Yeah.
And some people, like, it happened, like there was like really bad things, like one of the kids, like he landed up in the hospital, like, and
Oh
he
shit.
couldn't walk for quite a good few weeks. So it was really like, it wasn't like a nice situation. Now they were trying to discuss, like we were discussing like what we could do to help her, and they were like saying different punishments they could give her, maybe give her time out, maybe like thing. And I'm like, hold on a second, before you give her any punishments, you have to understand why she's doing it. Maybe she has ego in it, it's true, and she's just 7 years old, so it's easier to like understand it. But there's a reason why she's behaving that way. She's obviously in some sort of pain, some sort of something is happening to her that is causing it. Now, it could be something as simple as needing recognition,
Needing
or
attention,
feeling
validation.
understimulated, or needing attention, right? Or
Yeah.
any of that. But I don't think that means that it's not just ego. There's another reason why, right? So if a random person comes up to you and just slaps you in the face, part of it could be ego, but it can't be just ego. I don't know. That's what I believe. Doesn't mean that I'm right, but like my belief is that usually there's like a reason why behind things.
Sure, of course, there's a reason why like people get triggered, the anxiety's coming up, they don't know how to react otherwise. It's like, like you're confronting someone, and when you confront someone with your belief, you confront someone or something they did to you, or you confront someone with whatever, most people are going to get defensive, start screaming, like going off at you, instead of maybe if it's something that they did, they're not going to take responsibility and be like, hey, look, I'm sorry. Hey, look, my behavior, I did this because of this. I did this because I was going through this. A lot of people are going to be defensive and throw it back at you, or they're going to like manipulate the situation or gaslight you or whatever that may be.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Because
true.
it stems from something that stems from,
Right.
whatever pain that they're going through. But, they're going through, they've experienced pain, they've experienced suffering, or whatever it is that they're going through. But I don't think, um, whatever that they've been through, like, it's not a green
Not an
light,
excuse.
not an
I agree.
excuse. It's not an
It's
excuse.
not
So
an
it's like,
excuse. I
hey,
agree.
remove your ego and go do something about it.
Right. Exactly. Yes. So I like to say, whenever like we talk about these things, I like to say it's not about using for yourself, it's about for understanding other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree 100%. You can't just go and say like, "Oh, this happened to me," and then like, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so like that's where I'm coming from. Like I not
Okay.
like I agree with you when saying that, like, it's not all just
We
ego. I
said the
know,
same.
yeah, we're saying the same things. Like I know people, everyone experiences things, and that's, it stems from something else. Like it stems, people behave certain ways because of something that happened in their childhood. You don't know what it is, but they like it triggered something. That's what a
Right.
trigger is. It triggered something. But I think like, not doing the work to change this, response or reaction, or doing something horrible, saying something horrible, like that, that's your ego getting in the way of you doing the work to try and, better yourself as a person.
That's a good way to put it. I like it. Okay. So like you have something that happened to you, but by putting the blame on that thing that happening is the ego.
Exactly. It's like
Yeah.
letting, it's like, yeah, well, this shit happened to me, so that's why I'm like this. No.
Yeah, yeah. Like go do something about it
Go do
now.
something about it.
Yeah, it's gonna
No.
be painful, but go and do something about
Exactly. It
it.
will be painful, but no. Well,
Yeah,
the,
I
the
agree.
only thing with that is these people will never, they won't be surrounded with people that will be good for them. They won't have better relationships. They won't have strong relationships. They won't be around people with higher self awareness, because people with a higher self awareness won't want to be around that.
That's true. Very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the last point on people with a higher self awareness is they reflect on their values. So they listen to perspective when someone's talking about their beliefs and their values and so on, and they can hear someone else, they reflect on it, and they're not getting defensive when someone's trying to challenge them.
Yeah. It's also, I think it combines like a few of the things that we spoke about before. But it's a challenge because if you value something, then like you valuing something is your own opinion about it, right? There's no like one value is the best value that every single person in the world should go and follow it. However, if you have a value that you think is so important, you think everyone else should go and value that thing just as much as you, right?
Yeah.
So it gets challenging because you have to be able to so-called defend yourself or explain yourself of why you value that thing, but at the same time be open to hearing other people's perspectives and their values.
Yeah. So like, well, the way it was described here in this paper was saying that like, clarify what you're actually like chasing in life. Like, what is important to you? What is the core things that are important to you? Reflecting on that as you're growing. Each year you look at, what truly is important to me here.
Yeah, yeah, that
Um, you
makes sense.
know, what's his name? Hermosi? What's his first name?
Alex Hermosi, yeah.
Alex Hormozy. He said he was saying that someone asked him, he's in an interview and they're like, oh, you've got all these millions of dollars now. You guys do all these things. He's like, yeah, we tried to like, he's like, yeah, we bought all these houses and we realized that's not what we wanted. He's like, I wanted opportunity. He's like, I don't like having, all these cars or like buying all these things. That's not me. I don't care about the latest this and that. He's like, I like to go and have dinner with my wife and have a nice dinner and eat good food.
Yeah.
It's just for him, he was like our values or whatever that they were like wanting or what they strive for in growing their success is opportunity. They wanted the option, not a matter of
Yes.
having things. It's just the option is what was important.
Yeah. And he happens to be quite, I think, a self-aware guy. I don't know if he always was, but at least at this point of his life, he is. And yeah, and I think that's very true. Like whatever we're so chasing or trying to create our life around, is going to be different for different people, and you want to make sure that you're not chasing someone else's dream, but your own.
Yeah, absolutely. So these were the 5 habits, and I don't know. I don't think they're super hard. Like we'll just go through them again for the listeners. So it's the good habits to cultivate a higher self-awareness is listen more than you talk, be curious about your mind, look for your emotional blind spots, ask for feedback frequently and take it well, and take time to reflect on your values.
Yeah, I think just one thing, like as you were saying, ask for feedback frequently. Just reminded me of something. Um, my mom is trained by a trainer by is a trained trainer by Jack Canfield. Like she took all her things and she's like certified by him. And one of the things that he shares a lot that I really like is in relationships that you really care about. Like he's specifically talking about marriage, but or business ones or things that you want. Every week, you set a time where you ask the other person on a scale from 1 to 10, how did I do this week? And then what can I do to make it a 10? So you're being super conscious about it every single week. You're getting feedback. You are understanding what you did right, what you did wrong. And it goes both ways, right? And that way things don't build up and you could actually like improve your relationship every single week and like consciously work on it to make it better.
I love that. I absolutely totally agree with it. Every week you should be checking with your partner. Like, what did you like? How can we make this relationship better? Or where are we lacking or what do you need more of? Like, these are important things. And it's like, it needs to be happening weekly. I don't think most people don't do that.
No, no.
They don't do that. And the other thing about that point as well, about taking feedback and taking it well, is really important. Like I did my second ever podcast with my friend, there was a research study that showed like sometimes your people that are closest to you and people that you trust and you're around or a lot, they know your external behaviors better than you do. And so we pointed one out on each other live. It was done then and there, and she pointed
Yeah, I
out
remember. I
something
think
to
it was my
me.
favorite episode.
And I pointed out something to her. And yeah, the behavior was like for me, it was Tiff, you say that you're direct, but you're not. And you know what? I had this conversation with her. I'm like, you know what? I wasn't direct enough. And now I am way more direct than I've ever been before, and I'm like, I always want to be. And I feel like that makes me feel more true to myself. So yeah, it's definitely beneficial. Sometimes it takes you like, this was my second podcast. So this was like, back in before I released it. So back in February 2020. And we're almost 3 years ago until now is when I've realized it. Now I was like, yeah, I'm direct. Yeah, I'm always direct. No, I wasn't.
Right.
And now I'm like, it's something that I'm way more aware of now. And I've been implementing it a lot more in all my relationships. And it makes me feel, much more true to myself. And everyone it helps you just be better as a person and not, dismiss yourself or let things, let things slide that you shouldn't. Don't let things build up.
Yeah, I love that so much, that like how much like the consciousness of you working on yourself, and then like time for another conversation. Like what else,
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much, ST. Love this conversation as always. I just love it. I just love, like, with you, we just go so many places. We like a lot of great, beautiful like points that we made here for the listeners. And yeah, no, I can't wait for the listeners to hear the episode.
Well, thank you so much, Tiffany. This was so much fun. I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, and everyone, like, you could go check out Life Picks University TikTok. It's amazing, great stuff there. We love it. It's at
And
Life
don't
Picks
get offended
University,
when I
right?
tell you have cognitive function.
Yeah, listen to it. Don't get offended. Just take it on the chin. Thank you for listening to Get to Know You. If you